our sixth lecture on series of ethic and morality Islam by our dear Professor Ahmad. Last week, Prof talked about social ethics, where he focused on family, on brotherly, on neighbors. The one thing that Prof discussed last week, the importance of extended family, which is now I don't say less priority, but become more complicated because we are all mobile. Children are staying far away from the families, and our parents are staying by themselves in their old age. This concept of extended family very important. So this week, inshallah, Prof will discuss another big issues, which is regarding economic and related to it. So without further ado, we invite our dear Dr. Sajjad to moderate the session.
Assalamu alaikum, jazakumullah khair. We'll start with the brief introduction of Professor Nisa Ahmad. He is a Pakistani social scientist, an educationist, and professor of Islam. Currently, he is the Vice Chancellor of Rifa International University, Pakistan. In the past, he was the first Dean of Faculty of Usuluddin and Faculty of Social Sciences at the International Islamic University, Islamabad. Later, he also served as the Vice President of the university, during which time he visualized and founded the Dawa Academy. He also served as the first Dean of the Faculty of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences of the International Islamic University, Malaysia. He was given an award by the Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. He was awarded fellowship by the University Science Malaysia. He also earned meritorious professorship at the International Islamic University, Islamabad. In today's session, we shall have about 30 minutes of lecture, followed by about 30 minutes of question answers. Due to microphone noise, we shall keep everybody muted. You can write down your questions in the chat window, and I will read them out to our speaker during the question answer session. I will now request Professor Anis Ahmed to speak on today's topic, which is the ethical dimension of economy.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala khatim al-anbiya. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Economic activity, financial matters, and trade has been considered a material and worldly activity contrary to spirituality. Islamic worldview does not accept this separation between the spiritual and the worldly. It recognizes man's economic needs, but in an ethical framework. Next, please. Financial comprehensiveness of the Islamic ethical order and Islam as a deen, as hidayah or guidance in personal as well as social, economic, and political matters demands that we look on Islam not as a combination of rituals and ceremonies, but how ethically it wants to transform economic order. Therefore, we are trying to understand ethical dimension of economy today. Next, please. The existing orders in the world can be summarized in three. First and foremost, the capitalist world order, in which most of the Muslim countries are living. It considers economic development as the basis of everything. A small number of people who own more than they need use their excess wealth to further multiply it. Entrepreneur exploits the have-nots as cheap labor. Inequitability, distribution of wealth results in a disparity and social injustice. Next, please. Not much breathing space is left for small entrepreneurs, traders, farmers, and artisans. They are forced to live as servants of a global capitalist order. Next, please. Second order, socialism, claims to empower the proletariat through creating state ownership and management of the resources. Nevertheless, the ultimate loser remains common man who has no freedom to generate wealth. Next, please. The fascist economic solution is no different. Individual interest is made subservient to state or national interest determined by an oppressive, tyrannical, autocratic, coercive power. Next, please. The Islamic ethical model recognizes economy as a desirable activity in human society and in civilization. Islam looks on economic issues from essentially an ethical perspective and does not accept to separation between values and spiritual or material aspects. Next, please. The seeking benefits ethically is desired by Islam. Islam looks on economic activity as a matter of right to earn ethically. Therefore, the Quran says, O people, eat of the lawful and pure things in the earth and follow not in the footsteps of Satan, for surely he is your open enemy. Similarly, it provides a work ethics. A hadith tells us, Abdullah reported that Apostle of Allah, may Allah be pleased be him, said, when a servant sincerely works for his master and worships well, there is for him double reward, which means worship and working ethically is what Islam desires. Next, please. Enjoyable and lawful activity is permissible and ethical. Believers do not hold as unlawful the good things which Allah has made lawful to you, and do not exceed the bounds of right, which means that enjoy life, but not just for enjoyment, but to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next, please. It also desires dignity of labor to be fully maintained. Al-Muqdam reports that the Prophet of Allah said, no one has ever attained better food than what he eats as a result of the labor of his hand. And verily, Allah's Prophet Dawood used to eat by the work of his hand. Giving example of Sayyidina Dawood, the Prophet says, if you are working with your hand, may that be pen or may that be a hammer or a tool, then this is the best way of earning. Next, please. Therefore, living a decent life, and that means quality of life, is emphasized by the Quran. The Quran tells us, children of Adam, take your adornment at every time of prayer and eat and drink without going to excess. Which means that if you want to wear a good dress, wear good dress, not only in office, but also in masjid. If you want to dress in three-piece suit to go to your office and go to masjid in a shabby dress, it's not appropriate, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants zina, beauty in everything. Next, please. It also rejects the concept of world denial. Most of world religions consider worldly activities as material and not uh, superior to spirituality. On the other hand, the Quran tells us, as for monasticism, it is they who invented it. Allah never commanded that. Therefore, leaving the world in the name of spirituality, elevating spirituality by torturing oneself is totally prohibited by Islam. Next, please. Economic rights are defined by Islam, and therefore it says that the Sa'il and Mahroom, one who asks, and those who are deprived class, it is not that you give them charity, but it is their right. So the word used is haqqun, which means they have a right, not just a matter of our kindness or our favor to them. Next, please. This right has been further emphasized in two forms. First, zakah, which is obligatory ibadah and not a tax. Many Muslims globally think their zakah is a tax. They raise questions usually, we are paying zakah, should we also pay tax to state? They are two separate things. Zakah is ibadah, not tax. As a worship, we are supposed to deliver what Allah has given to us for those who are needy. It is theirs, not ours. We are only an instrument. Therefore, the Quran says very clearly that establish prayer and pay zakah, two things which are ibadat, are mentioned together. Just as salah is ibadah, zakah is also ibadah. And therefore, when the Quran says that when people are given authority in land, even there it says they establish system of zakah and salah together. Next, please. Then it talks about the distribution and does not leave it empty. So it tells us that the sadaqat are meant only for the poor and the needy and those who are in charge thereof, those whose hearts are to be reconciled and those in bondage, and to help those burdened with debt and for expenditure in the way of Allah. These are 7 distributions of zakah which are not changeable because the Quran has defined, which means that zakah can be given in all 7 or either one. We have a choice depending on priorities. But these include a variety of area. Masakin, those who are captives, political captives, cultural captives, intellectual captives, those who have been enslaved intellectually, they have to be liberated. And therefore, it's not only for one area. Talif qalb, for those who are newly converted and need some support, they have no means to survive by themselves. They have been expelled by their former relatives. And similarly, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so these are 7 distributions of zakah, which are all ethical distributions. Next, please. It also tells us that there is no separation as in the beginning between deen and dunya. So, regarding Salatul Jummah, it mentions that when you have completed your prayer in masjid, then don't think the prayer is over. You have to continue same zikr which you did in masjid, now in your economy, in your university, in your factory, in your parliament. All these aspects tell us that we cannot have a so-called separation of professionalism and ibadah. Deen and dunya are not two separate entities. Economic activity is not worldly, but part of spirituality. Next, please. Therefore, it says, it's no crime if you seek the bounty of your Lord during pilgrimage. People have left their homes saying, "Oh Allah, we listen to your call, we are coming," joining you in your home, praying, submitting to you. And while they leave for this ibadah, at the same time, during Hajj, the Quran says nothing wrong. If you want to have some economic benefit, go ahead with that. Which means economy is not something anti-spiritual, anti-religious. Next, please. Again, the ayah explains, we assuredly establish you in the earth and appointed for you livelihood in it. And then, have you considered the seed you till? Is it you or we make them grow? Agriculture, development, all those aspects which we are doing, these are under the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next, please. It talks about natural resources to be properly exploited and not wasted. Therefore, the Quran says, it's Allah who created the heaven and the earth, who sent down water from the heaven and hereby brought forth a variety of fruit as your sustenance, who subjected for you the ships that they may sail in the seas by his command. Next, please. Investment in social development. Therefore, the Quran talks about not only making prayer is something good, facing east or west is not just virtue, but virtue is when you are taking care of social needs, social responsibilities, when you are sharing your hard-earned salaries and money with on your relatives, on the needy, on faith and kin, on wayfarers, and for helping people. Therefore, economic activity and use of resources for social development is an obligation, and it cannot be possible unless economic activity is at peak. Next, please. The Quran again and again reminds us about proper utilization of our resources. Therefore, it says that we have established you in the earth and assigned for your livelihood in it. Therefore, little do you think you have to think more and more about how you are going to utilize these resources. Next, please. There is a promotion of trade. So the Quran says it is Allah who created the heavens and earth, who sent down water from the heaven and thereby brought forth a variety of fruit in your sustenance, who subjected for you the ships that they may sail in the sea, which means that sea trade, building of ships, use of transportation is an area that has to be explored. It's not some worldly activity, but it's what the Quran demands. Next, please. It also promotes agriculture. Therefore, it says, it is He who has brought into being gardens, the uh, trellised and the untrellised, and the palm trees, the crops, all varying in taste, and the olives and pomegranate, and so many other things, which means that it encourages believers to go ahead and do research in agriculture, try to find out how things can be improved, how we can have better quality, how we can serve humanity in a better way. Next, please. It at the same time promotes industrial development. Therefore, it says, believers, enter not houses other than your own until you have obtained permission for the inmates of those houses and have agreed with the peace. This is better for you. Therefore, he has provided uh, the material like iron and other things for development of industrial processes. Next, please. Then the role of those who are blessed with resources is identified by Quran as Allah has favored some of you, given fadl on the other with more provisions. Then those who are more favored do not give away their provisions to those their right hand possess, which means that those who are given resources and those who have war captives, it is their responsibility to free them, to liberate them, and use their money for freeing them. So resources are to be used for the welfare, for the freedom of people, for freedom of trade, for development of industrial and agricultural activities in society. Next, please. It reminds us that our transactions have to be ethical. So, O you who believe, take not your wealth among yourselves in wrongful ways, but let there be trade among you by mutual agreement. Therefore, it keeps on reminding that ethical economy, ethical behavior, ethical transactions are the basis of good living. Next, please. In this continuation, it also wants to uh, talk about what could be the weaker areas, what could be the areas that can harm a good society. In that respect, it makes total prohibition of bribe. And do not eat one another's property among yourself in wrongful ways, nor seek by it to gain the nearness of the judges, that you may sinfully consume a portion of other man's goods, and that knowing. See how the Quran preempts. We live in a culture where nowadays even some judiciaries are not free from such suspicions. The Quran preempts human nature and warns us that if you have a judicial system where bribes and pressures can work, then you will have corruption in society. No justice can be done. And if society is unjust, no economic development. you will have black holes in economy that will swallow the whole economic structure. Therefore, bribe and use of pressures on institutions is highly prohibited. Next, please. It also talks about standardization of scales and benchmarks. So, woe to defaulters then when they take the measure from men, exactly full measure, but when they measure or weigh for them, give them less than is due, which means that we have to use one and same scales for economic development, for even for human transactions, social transactions, educational transactions, everywhere we have to use one and same benchmarks. We cannot have two standards of morality. Yes, please. Then accountability of economic activity. So the hadith says, in the day of judgment, no one shall be able to move a step unless it is answered how he spent his life, how much of knowledge transmitted to practice, how did earn wealth, how did he spend, and how did he use his bodily energy, which means that out of three things related with economy, how do I earn, how do I spend, and how I'm going to use it for better purposes. All these aspects are going to be asked, which mean my economic activity has to be extremely ethical. Next, please. Then it wants at the same time moderation and balance, not that you have on the one hand people who are billionaires, trillionaires, on the other hand people who are unable to even have 2 meals a day. Therefore, moderation and balance is the purpose of economic ethical order. Any ethical order has to observe it. If asraf and deprivation is present in society, it cannot be called an ethical economic order. Next, please. It's very important to understand that Islamic economy and economic activity is knowledge based. A very important statement of Umar al-Khattab is, only one who has knowledge of deen should trade in our markets, which means that a trader who may not be able to uh, read a book of law or a book of philosophy, but he should know what is ethical economic transaction, what is ethically right and wrong. In that sense, knowledge of fiqh, of halal and haram, what is the limit, that has to be first understood. Then one can come to market and do some trading. I'm not aware of any global economic order where they say you first learn what is ethical way of doing, then you become entrepreneur. This is only Islam that talks about an ethical economic order where every tradesman, every businessman has to have basic knowledge of fiqh. Next, please. Therefore, the reward for a person who observes ethical transactions is huge. Ibn Umar said, the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the honest and truthful trader shall be with the Anbiya, Siddiqeen, and Shuhada, which means he will be with the prophets and with those who are categorized as truthful people, and with Shuhada or martyrs who give their life in the way of Allah. These three high level of existence are given to just a person who is, in our view, making money. We say trades making money. Naivety. The Quran and Sunnah say it's not making money. It's making Jannah or Jahannam. Therefore, a person who is sincerely, honestly, fairly dealing in economic activity should expect his station in Al-Akhirah with Anbiya, with Siddiqeen and Shuhada. Next, please. The Quran very strongly prohibits riba or interest. Unfortunately, 99% of economic activity globally is based on interest. The moment a student graduates from a university, or a person who is not going to university or college but wants to do some business but has no resources, the only option they have is take their project to a bank, convince them about its viability, and get a loan at a fixed rate bank will charge from them. And if there is any failure, then face all those consequences will lead to multiple rate of interest. The whole global economy, whether Muslim world or no Muslim world, is based on that kind of activity. The Quran wants to cut down on all unlawful activities. Therefore, it says very clearly, Allah has made buying and selling lawful and interest unlawful. Therefore, economy should be based on asset-based system and not on just speculative approach of interest-based economy. Next, please. Therefore, it says that those who are involved earlier in riba, they should give up and seek Allah's blessing and reward for the sacrifice. Next, please. To the extent that the Quran gives a severe warning, believers have fear of Allah and give up all outstanding interest if you do truly believe. But if you fail to do so, then be warned of war from Allah and His Messenger. Which means that if people are involving themselves in interest, then they are inviting a war. And who are the other party? Allah and His Prophet. So can any believer imagine that he wants to fight against Allah and Prophet? Which means those who are involved in riba, any form of riba, are calling for a very, very serious consequence, and they must understand the Quran very clearly. Next, please. Therefore, it encourages people to spend in the way of Allah. And there are those who amass gold and silver and do not spend in the way of Allah. Announce to them the tidings of a painful chastisement. Those who are just collecting resources and have no desire to utilize it and spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are given serious warning by the Quran. Next, please. The society is supposed to be a secure society, and for its security, the legal system provides very harsh punishment for those who violate its sanctity. Therefore, the Quran says very clearly that as for the thief, male and female, cut off hand of both. Apparently, it looks very severe punishment. But anyone who destroys economic balance of society, anyone who deprives a person of his property, has to be properly penalized in order to stop any future expansion of this kind of stealing and theft. Therefore, the Quran takes corrective measures, preventive measures, so people are not inclined towards wrongdoing. Today, this theft is done not by individuals, but global cartels who deprive people of their resources by their economic intrusions. Next, please. It condemns unethical means of earning. Therefore, we said ethical economic order. Grabbing other people's property without compensation or through deceitful means or fraud is prohibited. It prohibits bribery. It prohibits theft, abuse of orphans' property, sexploitation, obscenity, and indecency. Today you find that a big portion of economy is based on sexploitation of women. The whole industry of advertisement globally is incomplete without exposing women with very little dressing. So their body is used for economic purposes and benefit for the entrepreneur without having any respect and dignity for women. And same happens to all that pornographic material which has been made viral, which has been there, and which destroys the ethical fiber of our youth. It's so much accessible. A child can go on online and can approach all those outlets where he can or she can observe obscenity. And this is one great threat to the future of civilization. Next, please. It also prohibits music and performing arts which deprive people of their sense of judgment, to the extent unless they listen to music, they cannot read a book of mathematics and chemistry. Unless they have gone to a dance party, a performing art drama, they don't feel they have relaxed. Relaxation for them means either this kind of activity or using some drugs. The uh, uh, the clubs and places where they have all kinds of chemicals available for youth, and then manufacturing, trading, marketing, and storing of liquor, which is one big source of not only ethical uh, problems but also physical problems, uh, uh, health problems. Similarly, and their production, interest-based transaction at high low rates, irrespective of personal loans, commercial transactions, all those have been unlawful means of earning which have been identified by Islam. Next, please. Then it wants to have liberation from selfishness. Therefore, Islam transformed the mindset from a selfish, individualistic, materialistic approach of life to a benevolent, friendly, helpful, humanistic conduct and behavior. It wants to create a synergy between those who have resources and those who have a skill through musharaka, partnership, and mudaraba or profit sharing. Next, please. It prohibits unethical resource generation. Those who have resources are not allowed to create artificial scarcity by hoarding or by monopoly or of cartels, and no speculative economic maneuvering. Next, please. It inspires people to do infaq and sadaqat. Therefore, an individual has right to own whatever he has obtained through lawful and ethical right means. Whatever is over and above his needs, he is supposed to do infaq on his savings and assets over an yearly zakat. And at the same time, if Muslims communities implement a system of zakah, it can take care of poverty, hunger, lack of health facilities and shelter, and remove economic injustice. And you don't need to have all those modern solutions of homes for senior citizens or for those who need protection. It is within the family structure. It provides for all those securities. Next, please. It wants to have an ethics of spending. A responsible citizen is not supposed to harm himself nor destroy balance, peace, and security in society. Therefore, squandering hard-earned money in gambling, drinking, drug addiction is prohibited. Spending on good causes is encouraged. Popularization of healthy sports, investments in education, in healthcare, in building welfare institutions, promotion of tourism and healthy food, promotion of book culture, offering of scholarships, building of world-class hostels for students, orphans and travelers, and creation of awqaf are some means which help in eradication of poverty, ill health, unequal distribution of wealth, and elimination of class consciousness in society. Next, please. It wants circulation of wealth. Application of ethics in economy results in circulation of wealth and elimination of concentration of resources in a few hands. Islamic system of inheritance, miras, requires that after a person passes away, whatever is left behind that be distributed according to Quranic law of inheritance. A person cannot make a will for more than 1/3 of the leftover. If no will is made, all he or she owns is to be distributed among near relatives. If there is no survivor, state takes over. Next, please. Then we find that all those who are civil servants and who are not involved in industrial development, who cannot develop assets like businessmen, even for them, an ethics is provided, and that ethics is very interesting. One who acts as our employee, he can have a wife, a servant if he needs, not and a residence if he does not have a place to live. And then I have been informed that the Prophet said that whoever takes more than that is either a cheat or a thief, which means that basic needs of everyone in society are to be met, and it is responsibility of state and those who have resources to make sure that even those who are civil servants have shelter, have a wife, family, have a good living, so they are not involved in corruption. The main idea is an economy which is corruption free. Next, please. It is a welfare economy, an economy based on social justice, welfare of common man, mass education, social security, and collective insurance brings stability, sustenance, self-reliance, and non-dependency on foreign aid. Muslims as well as non-Muslim citizens enjoy equally in the benefits. Emphasis on trade and agriculture results in entrepreneurial initiative. If a land is not cultivated continuously for 3 years by an owner, and someone who has no land wants to cultivate that land, state can transfer it to him and in this way it can resolve the problem of poverty. Ethics in economy creates healthy competition while discourages monopoly, exploitation, and unrestricted accumulation of wealth and resources in a few hands. Next, please. Jazakallah khair. I tried to be as quick as possible so we have some time for interaction through questions from our participants.
Jazakumullah khair. Our first question from Abdullahi: how should Muslim economists attempt a fresh understanding of the economic phenomena? Similarly, what should be an individual outlook towards economic work? Should someone aim at earning the greatest amount of wealth that is physically possible, or should someone be considering earning of wealth as a means to something other that is greater in rewards? What is the place of economic activities in general scheme of life as conceived by Islam?
Jazakallah khair. For the first part of your question, to introduce new approach that economy should be freed from entrepreneurial greed, the capitalist order where the big fish swallows small fish. How to discourage that? One possibility is that such forums where youth intellectuals get together, they analyze existing system. Definitely it has some benefits as well as big shortcomings. So shortcomings have to be highlighted, and then we try to find out how Islam has provided for a better system. I shared with you very briefly, Islamic economic order is ethical, is benevolent, is based on Allah consciousness, is based on uplifting the people, is not based on just amassing wealth. Therefore, such discussions at intellectual level, at local level, needs to be conducted on campuses, in various forums, newspapers, journals, and that will create an awareness. And I'm sure that in the past 30 years, there has been a great awareness in the form of emergence of Islamic banks in Malaysia and all over the world. For second part of your question, you see, the Islamic approach is everything that is earned ethically is permissible. Someone may be able to earn hardly enough for survival. Some may be able to have a project that makes him a millionaire in short period of time. In both cases, if the motive behind is love of wealth, then we have violated basic principle of Tawheed. Then we have made wealth our God. But if the muharrik or if the motive behind is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's obedience and pleasure, then you may have huge wealth and you will use it for the benefit of a large number of people. Therefore, the Quran says, they ask you about what should we give. The answer is, Qulil af, whatever is more than you need. How much we need? You may need a suit for winter, a suit for summer. But if you want to have every day a new suit, have 7 suits for winter, 7 for summer. How much you want more? 500 suits? Who will wear those? Therefore, greed and this kind of extravagance is prohibited. Within the limits, one can enjoy, one can have that much amount, but just for the sake of earning is not a rational nor Islamically endorsed approach.
Jazakumullah khair. Next question. It is said that Islam prefers we invest our money rather than saving it. How do you explain this concept?
Well, when the Quran says that zakah is an obligation on every Muslim, it means it's not obligatory only on those who are rich, but also on those who are poor. But how do poor pay zakah? They can pay zakah if they work hard and make that much amount, that much wealth, which is enough for their own living and has some saving. Therefore, every male and female is encouraged to observe zakah as ibadah by economic involvement. Zakah means doing ibadah at the same time involving economically, because you cannot pay zakah unless you have economic activity. So it works two way, and that's why I have been saying that zakah is not a tax but an ibadah. At the same time, it's a motivational force for industrial and agricultural development.
Next question from Nuruddin. Some parties state that the development of the Islamic economy today, including Islamic banking, is still at a surface level, and many things in it still follow the economy of capitalism. Is Islamic ethics still not an integrated part of today's Islamic economic development?
Well, this is definitely one view, and I respect that view. But my simple question is, in a world order where for 200 years there is a total control of an aggressive capitalist economy. Can Islamic economic order emerge within 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or will need some time? If it needs some time, would it be logical to think that in all details and complexities it is established on day one? Can we have a whole system of anything on one day? Or we go gradually, step by step? In that sense, I fully endorse the idea that Islamic economic system and institutions are growing. They are learning every other day. And with their learning process, they want to correct themselves till they are having a foolproof system which is completely away from capitalist system. And we must allow that much margin to them for their sincerity, for their effort, and pray to Allah for their success.
Next question from Suzali is again a specification of the previous question. They are saying that we notice Islamic bankings also subscribe to conventional base lending rate prescribed by the central bank, and riba is still there.
You know, in banking system, there are various rules and regulations by states, and no banking system can work independent of state. Bank Nigara and state banks elsewhere develop their policies and make fiscal systems without which a bank cannot operate. Therefore, in some situations, it's quite possible that a loan is taken or an amount is taken by a bank from the central bank of a state, and then they have no choice but to follow their regulation. Now, suppose an Islamic bank has taken some amount from Bank Nigara and that bank is giving them on a fixed charge. But Islamic bank is not allowing fixed charge to its own clients, but operating on Islamic principle. The client, is he involved in any kind of sinfulness? Not at all. The client and dealing Islamic bank is getting, according to Islamic principles, his services, and he is not at all accountable for whatever wrong has been done by the Islamic bank. Now, why Islamic bank is doing it? Because the Quran says when you have a situation where either you die or survive, the word used by is durura. Durura means where it's beyond your control. Islamic bank cannot continue and sustain without that legislation which allows the bank to work under state bank. Therefore, even the Islamic bank who is by force, compelled to do something un-Islamic may have a chance to be forgiven because it is durura. But so long as durura, it is permissible. Without durura, not permissible.
Next question from Nuruddin. Is the capitalist economic system also responsible for the emergence of the sexual revolution in the West, which ended in the outbreak of AIDS pandemic?
Definitely, there is no doubt about it. It is a whole industry, global industry, which began with pornography, which began with all those dens of evil where human bodies are sold, where all kind of immorality is committed, and that is part of a global economy. The human body import and export is done globally from nations where there are economic instability, and they take a huge number of people and they are physically abused and sold for that purpose. So it's part and parcel of capitalist economy, because capitalist economy is based only on entrepreneurial venture and personal benefit. It has no ethics. It has no principles of a divine nature operationalized.
Jazakumullah khair. We are waiting for more questions. One question from Rusafizla. Couldn't understand it properly. The Protestant ethics and the spirit of capitalism seems to be the basic of the faith living. Why we Muslims are still in our knowledge base?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, you are saying that what Weber thought and what he understood in terms of capitalist economy and what Muslims are thinking, they are two separate things or one thing. How we compare them? The very simple response to your question is Islamic ethical economic order is based on divine principles, while what has taken place in certain religious groups is not everything divine. Interest was prohibited in Judaism as well as in Christianity. Whether you call it Protestant ethics or Catholic ethics, and if you allow interest, then can that system be called based on Protestant ethics? Not at all. Therefore, there is a big difference between Islamic ethical order and the so-called Weberian or Adam Smith's economy or other economists who have come up with the various approaches. Islamic approach is different and unique. It is not a formal approach. It is an approach which is comprehensive, which transforms human vision. The whole human perspective is changed. The person who was till yesterday just making money now thinks, how, whatever I have, should I spend to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Not to save, but to invest. The more he invests in the psyches, have more and more and more and no limit, become the global power. But Islamic economy does not give this message. It tells us that become more and more distributor, distribute more, benefit more people, instead of acquiring and becoming a rich person on earth.
Jazakumullah khair. Okay, next question from Muhammad. In the corporate world, almost all organizations involved in riba. Should a Muslim work in such environment? How can a Muslim youth pursue his economic life if a government in the developing economies provide this opportunity?
Very simple approach should be taken. If a person is studying and he cannot continue his studies without getting a job in the market, and that job is not for any normal activity, but for an activity which is prohibited. Say, for example, it's a job of a security guard on a store where liquor is sold. And unless he gets this job, he cannot continue his education. Or if he's not getting education, just he is a family man, he cannot make his family survive. What should he do? Let the family die, or let the education go, or in such situation, till he is or she is able to get a better job, have that job for sustainability. This again falls in the category of durura, ittirab. When you have something unavoidable in terms of fiqh. The Quran provides basis, ethical basis. And so long that person is fully aware of this responsibility and searching for a better job, the person is not committing any sin. This is required for his or her survival. Therefore, fulfilling Allah's command. Islam provides easiness in all situations, but does not want us to become lazy. You get a job of security guard in a store with liquor shop. Now there are 10 other jobs available, but slightly less salary. Learn to work in less salary, which is halal, than a salary which is high. In such situation, we can apply the principle of darura. Darura means which is unavoidable. Therefore, common sense at the same time, some knowledge of Quran and Sunnah can help us in resolving these issues.
The next question is similar regarding mortgage from banks to buy properties when living in a Western country. So similar principles should apply, or?
Yeah. You see, I think the question is based on less information about the West. In the West, it is not correct to think that all real estate business is done on interest-based mortgage. There are nearly half a dozen secular conventional banks in England who are providing interest-free loans for housing of people. You just have to go and find out. Banks are fully aware of needs of Muslim society, and to gain clients, they have come to terms on Muslim conditions because they want clients. In my own experience, not today, but in 60s and 70s in North America, when I was there, Muslims themselves developed various institutions, and one institution was that development of a cooperative in order to get housing. And in that cooperative, which was developed in Toronto, developed in California, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, in Indiana, where I was there for quite some time, other places, Pennsylvania, the principle was that membership was open and members were supposed to make a contribution, monthly contribution. And when the contribution reached a point where the collective amount in such way was that much to buy a property, then on first come, first serve basis, a member who was on the list could get that amount to purchase a property. But the property was in the name of cooperative. And gradually, every month the rent was paid, not interest, rent was paid, and that became as adjustment towards the total cost. And gradually, the share of the uh, um, person who was renting the property starts increasing, and that again creates asset for others to have a property. In this way, the larger the number, the quicker the turnover, and people were able to buy their houses without any interest. So there can be not one but many ways of avoiding interest-based housing schemes. It only requires effort on the part of Muslims, awareness on the part of Muslims, and that can resolve the issue.
Jazakumullah al-khair. I think we have run out of time now. Professor, could you please summarize in a couple of minutes today's topic discussion?
Well, three simple points. First and foremost, Islam does not look down upon economic activity. It encourages, because in its articles of faith is zakah, which requires economic activity. In its articles of faith is Hajj, which requires that you have assets enough to travel and go, and at the same time, during Hajj, you may have some trade permitted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means within the system of ibadat, it has put economy as part of ibadah. Secondly, its economy is not based on the vicious concept of exploitation and oppression, but on adl, equity, fairness, on compassion. Even when a person takes a loan, the Quran says it is better if he wants to extend the time without charging any interest on that. Those who have means are encouraged to make their wealth available for those who don't have, so they become self-reliant. It's a cooperative approach. It's not exploitative. On the other hand, the capitalist system in which we are living means if I have more money, then I use my spare money to make more money. And that's exploitation. And lastly, Islamic ethical approach is the key in economy, in family, in individual life, in everything. It wants economic activities as ethical as possible, and that ethics is not determined by human mind, but that ethics is divine ethics of halal and haram, ethics of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes or dislikes. When these principles are properly understood and applied, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am going to make my blessings shower from skies and from earth and from all around you. And you will be living in a society which is peaceful and dignified.
Jazakumullah al-khair, and thank you everybody for actively participating. Brother Shahran, over to you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you, Dr. Sajjad. We'll see everyone next week, same time, same.
Inshallah.